All right. Thanks for your time. Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. It's supposed to be a lightning talk, so total and prepared. I cut half of it last night. So today's action plan to demystify Rails, probably do some demo code and break down parts of that form Rails, like bundler, rec, active support, action mailer, action controller, all the things. About me, you know me, Anton, also freelance. I changed titles. Now I'm extreme programmer. I used to be a software stuntman. I work at Fresho, which is a fantastic company, software as a service for restaurants. So cheers to that. Fresho, yeah. You can find more about me at friendlance.me. Yeah, a few pictures to warm you up. I was in Thailand with my first trip to Southeast Asia. Fantastic country, highly recommend it. A lot of culture, a lot of fishing, a lot of nature. Really loved it. That's a picture of the beach from the movie The Beach. You've probably seen it 20 years ago. It's fantastic now. It's not very touristy, so highly recommend it. I was in Sydney recently. That we'll talk later. This is Chris Oliver. Picture with the man behind rails, Hedgebox, behind Go Rails, Jumpstart. You probably all know him. And these are the guys from all around the world, Australia, and this guy in the middle, he's from Evil Martians, which is a fantastic company. Highly recommend to look at their gems and their work. They're doing amazing consultancy. So today's talk is dissecting, demystifying Rails. We'll probably start with a poll. Who of you started with Rails directly and bypassing learning Ruby? Raise your hand. Yeah, we got 40% of people. Hopefully this talk will be useful for you. And raise your hand if you use Rails for commercial purposes, like for less than 2 years or never used Rails. Yeah, less than 2 years. Yeah, so you guys are pretty experienced. So hopefully I'll be able to get you interested. Why we need to learn Rails, why I came up with this talk. For juniors and for those of you who started with Rails directly, you'll probably find it useful to understand where Ruby stops and Rails ends. There's a lot of magic in Rails. If you get in kind of, quite experienced, you start to make some architectural decisions, it will be available to use to understand where to use part of Rails, where to use Rails in full, or just get away with active model and the basic stuff. And eventually we all break down, Rails conventions. Yep, Simon?
Can you just share screen with Zoom? Because
Oh, yeah, sorry, guys. Yeah, I'm not
yeah,
sharing my screen. I'm really bad with technology. All right.
thank you.
Cool. Look at that. Now we have all this amazing Zoom stuff. All right. So, cool. Yeah, these are my slides. Right. Why? Yeah, and this talk was inspired by the talk that Michael forwarded to me. He was in Thailand, Ruby Thailand. There was an amazing talk 2 years ago. The guy pretty much said that you have to break down Rails to fully understand it, and you have to use all these components that listed on the left, like tools and libraries, like including bundler, rake, rec, all the parts of Rails, and use them individually in isolation. Try to do some lead code challenges and hackathons, and distill them down to all these concepts on the right, and understand what Ruby DSL. We always throw this word, DSL. If you don't know what DSL is, it's domain specific language. Anybody knows who is, can explain what DSL is? Can have a concrete idea? Quick example of DSL, SQL, structural language. It was designed for business people. I think we need to open the door. You can't build a Doom game with it, but it was designed specifically to retrieve data. You can't really code much on SQL, but yeah, this is an example of domain-specific language. Rake that we use and make, they're examples of DSL language. Make is like a C language, automation tool, specifically for automation. Yeah, so you kind of really understand which part of this parts of Rails is a DSL, and other things that you have kind of to distill, like security, how it affects security, what is responsible for routing, what is responsible for templating, ORMs, object relationship mapping. So you have to distill that. And also, like, I was also puzzled, with this name, active or action. This is very confusing. Sometimes you require active or action. Like, anybody knows what's the difference? Yeah, spelled differently, of course. Anything else? Yeah, that's a good start. Yeah. I don't have a solid answer. I kind of tried to Google it. I watched a few podcasts, evil Martians. The way I understand, oh yeah, sorry, Adam.
Is actually just more like
Exactly. Yeah, I think so. The way I would put it, it's not like a front end. It's more like about your user interaction. Like, you have like action controller, action. Probably, maybe. Yeah, was it? Yeah. There you go. Yeah, it's the podcast that accompanies this book. He talks extensively about it. So the easiest way to remember active is more like your domain logic, like active, active model, active support, all this kind of support stuff for Rails that goes, backendish stuff, and everything that revolves around HTTP has action, generally, like action mailer, action view, action controller, and so forth. That's my understanding. Don't get.
Sorry, just
Yeah.
I know you did this in the book club as
Mhm.
well. And this is an equal Martians guy. So the rule is not set in stone. Actually, it is, because he then went to a conference where the person who named it said that's the general idea. Anything to do with a user interaction has the action prefix. This likely comes from the fact that controllers have actions. On the other hand, model-related libraries use active, probably because active record, the first of the kind. Finally, there is a library that glues both parts of the Rails together, and that is Railclass.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what it is. It is. Yeah. So action is around user interaction, and active is around your model, as I said, and domain logic. But let's before jumping into all this Rails part, let's start with the bundler. Bundler is, we all use it. Bundler never kind of, it wasn't like there from the start. So our life is pretty easy with bundler. We bundle gems, we bundle install. It's our library management. So you're all familiar with all this bundle exec, bundle install commands. But a few things to add to your thing, you can just do bundle init to initiate your gem file. Instead of copy pasting gem files, you just do bundle init and it will initiate it with all this good stuff. You can also add gems, via CLI, bundle add active support, and you can also uninstall it. But there's a few more things to those. You can also list all your gems using bundle show. You can like show the path to the gem or get more details, or open gem in your editor using bundle open. But my favorite one is bundle console. I recently discovered. If you don't have Rails and you're trying to do a lead code challenge, and you want to kind of, instead of going to IRB, you just go to bundle console. It will automatically require all your gems that are listed in your gem file. Fantastic. It's deprecated, as you can see here, but I think it will be similar concept. What is rake? Rake is a kind of bread and butter of Rails. A lot of commands that you use now, RailsDB migrate, RailsDB create, used to be rake. Rake is automation tool similar to Makefile in Unix systems. So yeah, it basically used for file manipulation extensively, like in Ruby. You can specify, some rules, some dependencies. You can give rights to the rake scripts to create directories. So you can see this task, to touch a file. This is shell script, and it gives dependency, directory ship it. Pretty simple. One of the biggest takeaways from learning rake for me, you can use multitask. If you change task to multitask, it does run in several threads. So if you have very heavy operation for this, some script to change the file, you can append it with multitask, or you can launch a command rake with the flag -m for multi-threading. That will be way faster. Yeah, I'll probably do a quick demo. Let me, so rake, this is the make file, for example. This is the way a lot of people prefer to automate stuff. This is essentially giving you like some scripts to bundle install and bundle Rubocop, right? This is quite a hard to digest syntax. You can also do the same. with break file. You know, this is the same script but written in Ruby. And look at this. This is way easier to understand and digest, at least for Rubies. So yeah, you can check it. Yeah. So cd rake. So yeah, let's try to do make. So yeah, hi. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, make, and you can try to do it with break, and yeah, it will be. Yeah, you see, it's kind of the same output, but way, you know, different DSL. So yeah, you know, rake is DSL for Ruby, and make is DSL for C for Unix systems. The next one is rack. Rack is a middleware. We all use it. You should learn it. I reckon it's you know, you spend 1 or 2 days building a very simple application using rack. Basically, rack is a middleware between our Ruby application and the server. So all you need to do to run your basic web application is just these 3 lines. You know, create a config.ru rackup file, run, and rack is very simple and very ingenious interface. It's like an array of 3 values. The first value is your status code for HTTP. Then you pass key values of headers for HTTP and your payload, you know, hello world. And then you just do rackup and do curl. Yeah, let's try that. I think, yeah, I have this demo code here. So Rex config is what I get. You know, you get like, you know, like case statement. I overcomplicated things a bit. So you have like a root to go to 200. If you do hello world, and if else it's 404. So we can try that. So this is pretty much your rake application. You don't need like fancy stuff. You can, you know, do different paths. So hello world, and yeah, if you do some unexisting thing not found. Yeah, this is bread and butter. Every framework is rake compatible, so you should learn it. Active support is quite controversial extension to Rails. Yeah, we jump into Rails territory. This is essentially extensions to Ruby. Yeah, so I'll probably jump through it. You know, we all use like presence, blank, present. You know, instead of using vanilla Ruby, nil and empty, we can get away with a blank and present that we always return a boolean. We always use it in Rails, but you don't have to use Rails with it. Other things that I extensively use, pluck. You know, this comes from active support. You don't need Rails to use pluck. You can just saturate your library with this. To format a string, merge, squish, extract numbers, you know, to get the odd numbers and extract the numbers from original array. Index by, exclude. This is all part of active support. This is not like some Rails thing. You don't need Rails for that. What we extensively use in Fresho, like not extensively, but I've seen it with options as well. This is a fantastic thing. If you want to like group, like, you know, associations, you know, with a dependent destroy, you can pass options to these objects. You know, for example, this association has many customers, has many products, invoices. You can also pass dependent destroy with this script. We also do it like, you know, on after, you know, on callbacks. You know, if you want to validate something on create or on invoicing. Another one, delegate. Delegate is fantastic as well. This is part of active support. Don't need Rails. You can delegate, you know, name method. You know, if user doesn't have a name, you can delegate it to profile. So this is another thing that you can just use outside of the box with active support without Rails. Now let's jump into active model. Active model is basically when we touch, you know, these validations and all the things that you see with Rails. You know, you can just, it's kind of similar to active record base that we'll talk about later, but you can just get away with active model model or API that is part of model that will give you validations, translations, you know, that I18N translations and conversions, you know, whether it's persisted or ID methods. You can also extend it with callbacks, attribute methods, you know, to define some meta attributes. Dirty, active model dirty, you know, if the model was changed on the way, you want to validate it. Serialization, JSON serialization, this is part of active model. It's not part of Rails. And secure password, you know, we all use it. You can manage your passwords and sort your passwords, you know, using secure password. With just that, let's jump into active record. Active record, essentially, the way I see it, is active model with a steroids and database connection. Is essentially the same as active model with a few things. So in order to run a fully fledged application, you don't need Rails. You just need active record, and yeah, that's it on the database. So as I said, yeah, active record is similar to this. Active record is also called after a design pattern called active record. It's defined by Marriott follow object that wraps a row in a database table or a view, encapsulate the database access and adds domain logic to the data. Active record is bread and butter of Rails. So in order to do active record, you just need to require it, define your database connection, try it with a SQLite, and yeah, you can just use active model validations, and has many relationship and or belongs to. Yeah, it's very useful for running sanitization scripts or basic kind of data manipulation, like if you want to like migrate data. Highly recommend to try it. Another cool things for experienced people, that's what we discovered in Fresh. There was a cool article. If you want to inspect, some queries, you can override, combine log subscriber from active support with active record. And if there's a match, for some SQL statement and you want to debug it, you can monkey patch a SQL method for log subscriber, and initiate binding binding IRB, and then you attach it to log subscriber. Yeah, so let's probably do a quick demo. So I'll try to spin up a basic rake active record. Yeah, so in order to create an app, that's what I said, it can require active record, define database connection, define some migrations if you don't have any table persisted. And yeah, you can just create users and use posts that belong to user, and that's what we write in here. So yeah, we can try that. Active record. Yep. So yep, user.all, and there's no Rails here. You can fetch here and say user.first, and then posts. Yeah, this is pretty powerful. The next thing, I guess, would be to create a web app. You can spice it up, with a rec. So active record on rec. So basically it's the same file, but I just specify a rec file that, requires this application, and do some, list users, for example, on the web using rec. So here I send, code request and, content type, text, HTML, some headers, and then a payload, here just an array with a string that does basic, user mapping and listing them with a join. So let's try to do that. Yeah. Yep. Exit from this one. Yeah. So we got a server running. Yeah. So yeah, it just lists all the posts in a nice way. So yeah, the code behind it, for the posts is here. You can just list HTML in here doc, and I highly recommend to do this at home. Yeah, so you can just go to forum, submit a hello world, submit query, get a confirmation, and yeah, it will append to the list. So it interacts with the database just using active support, active record and rec. You don't need Rails to build basic application. And once you understand, how it all works under the hood, you can, digest, post request and get request, and, render a form or 200 success, whether it's a request coming with different verbs. So try building that. Right, back to presentation, mindful of time. Active job, unfortunately, you can't use in isolation. You have to use Rails, but basically active job is a, facade for your background jobs. What I would recommend, study backends. We all heard about Sidekick. It's #1 background processing service. The beauty of Sidekick, you don't need Rails for it. You can just play with the Sidekick and schedule jobs with it. Unfortunately, it's Redis backed, whether it's a good or bad. It's a contested topic. Good job is alternative. It's backed by database, which is its strength, the way I say it, but unfortunately it needs Rails. Rescue, same as Sidekick, Redis backed and doesn't need Rails. Another big contestant is SolidQ. It's coming from Rails. I think it will be default value. So SolidQ is a background service, designed by Rails team. It's like 0.03 version. It's pretty new, but it's a database backed. Yeah, and inspired by Rescue, and good job. Also look at the queue. I think it's maintained by Brandon. If it's still maintained, Brandon is active member of Ruby community, and all these guys here. Active mailer, now we are kind of going into is it active mailer? Is it action? It should be action mailer, I think. Action mailer, yeah, that's the thing that I discussed. This was my mistake. So yeah, that's a good way to kind of focalize it. So you see, it should be action mailer, because active mailer, it's not kind of domain logic. It's more like a user. It's sending like a view, like a rendering stuff to a user. And with action mailer, you don't have to use Rails again. You can just require it, define your mailer, and define this method notify. You can define attachments. You can define where you're going to sell it from, subject. You obviously need to configure it with your server, if you're going to use it, but you can use it offline here. You can demo it, and you can render different formats, whether it's a vanilla text, just dump text, or HTML that we always see. And then you kind of say notify, deliver now. And yeah, let's demo it. I guess mailer, action mailer. Right, so let me show the code. Action mailer, yeah, pretty simple. Yeah, I've got this let open it, use it to open it locally. So yeah, this is the same stuff that I just showed you before with attachment that sits in this directory. And let's do we have a rake file for it? No, we don't. Yeah, let's just run the script, bundle exec Ruby. Cool, now we're opening this file. So yep, this is the HTML message, from Friendlands to Ruby Australia. That's a picture of me doing graffiti in Thailand. So right, jumping. Oh, sorry. My presentation. Right. Other things to look at, mindful of time: action cable, action view, template, and action controller, action pack, active storage. Unfortunately, you can't dissect them. You have to use them as part of the Rails, but to look at them, look at the routing. For routing, I would recommend you to try building, what I just showed you before, and also look at Sinatra first, and then look at Hanami. They follow this basic Ruby principles, original to Ruby, at least they claim. Zytework is a code loader. You can use it in isolation from Rails to do your hackathons and lead code challenges to load your files. So you don't have to require every file and require relatives and all this stuff. You just add Zytework, add some configs, and off you go. Brakeman, another thing, it's a cybersecurity kind of gem that scans your code. It will be default part of Rails 8. So do look at it. Last words, I guess, yeah, run minimalistic Rails, try to build as many Rails as you can. You can initiate new app, using minimal flag instead of, creating Rails new the default. For me, it was like 5 seconds versus 17 seconds on a hot start to generate minimalistic app that doesn't give you a lot of fancy stuff. It uses SQLite database. You can also generate API Rails app if you need to, and you can also skip a lot of things, skip Docker, skip action mailer, and say, yeah, just look at Rails new help. Rails CLI, look at the Rails CLI as well. Rails help, it will give you the same stuff that I just talked about. When you generate models, do look at the help, and it will give you good examples. When you try to generate like a model, it will give you all these kind of fields and columns that you have to specify like a template. So do this. In conclusion, wrapping it up, as I said, try to build stuff, learn Rake. There's a very fantastic script by Evdegrim, graceful developer, how to use Rake. Build a basic Rake server. Use commands bundle init, bundle add, bundle console. Use active support in isolation. Then, for your lead code challenges, and try to build a basic active record and rec application. Do minimal and only add Rails, packages when you need them. Don't add a lot of stuff just because Rails goes outside, gives you that. Yeah, these are some references, as I said, free great course from Graceful Dev. Another thing that I was using Ruby on rulers, quite old repository. The guy Noah, he was at this conference. He had a book, I think, How to Rebuild Rails. He has this repository when he just has like 7 minimalistic files, and it's essentially kind of a Rails mock. It has like a database connection. Your ORM, your DSLs. Yeah, so do look at that. Yeah, I think this is me. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah. Simon? Chat, yep. Right, so. Yeah, I see. Yeah, so while mostly consistent, the action active has a number of historical inconsistencies. Yeah, that's what I thought as well, that are too hard to change now. So just use them as needed and don't think too hard about the what's. Yeah. All right, yeah. Adam, yeah.
That looked like a fantastic learning experience. I've used active support outside of Rails, but having done that, that experiment and the learning you've got, if, for example, maybe you need a microservice that sends out emails, do you think you would reach for action mailer without Rails, or you're more likely to say use like Nami or Sinatra or something where you get that lightweight framework around it?
It's a great question. Like, I want to say, yeah, I would just use action mailer, but realistically, I think eventually people start rebuilding Rails from scratch. So I would probably start with Rails or Hanami, something that is done by, people who know what they're doing. I've never run a mailing service. You can do anything, I guess, yeah, these days, but
Or it looked like you have to get it to work, or is it pretty straightforward? Like you could spin something up reasonably quickly without.
like for basic stuff, yeah, you can spin up something really quickly, but like the script that I showed you with login, when you try to override a Rails logger, with a SQL, I tried to use it in active support. It was like kind of a bit of an overhead, so I just thought maybe I'll get away with the Rails minimal API. And yeah, you have to define a lot of things, that you're not really aware. For example, Rails logger, it's like it relies on active support logger, and yeah, I found it's a bit too much to reinvent the wheel. But yeah, I might be wrong. Yeah. Yep.
What's wrong with Redis?
What's wrong with Redis? Yeah, it's a great. I don't know. That's like Redis is like yeah, you can't put a lot of stuff in Redis, and it can just die. Yeah, it's pretty reliable system. But if it dies, there's no recovery. I think there's nothing wrong with Redis. I think the way the people schedule their jobs in Sidekick, they purely rely on Redis. If you want something reliable, write something to database, and then you remember persistence.
I think the master slave configuration as well.
Yeah, it's pretty robust.
It is robust, but
it's different if you're a big organization with lots of servers.
yeah, there was a good talk at RubyConf about Redis as well. Yeah, and how you scale Redis, and it can get pretty hairy. But yeah, Michael, yeah.
Just kind of regarding Adam's question about how much hackering you had to do. I noticed in your migrations you were using 6, not 7. So last time I played with this stuff, and it was kind of cool that it wasn't too much hackering, but I needed to run Rails migrations version 6 with 7 didn't work. Did you run into that, or did you just copy it?
No, I just copied it, to be honest, and I thought, oh, I'll just go with what works, yeah, rather than just doing experiment.
There are little things like that I think last time I looked at it, was like I couldn't use Rails migrations without specifying them as 6, and I think I had to specify the version in the bundler file to say that I'm 6, and that works. So yeah,
I had a few issues, with the SQLite, like 5 days ago, SQLite 3 gem was upgraded to 2.0.0. And I started to have some weird stuff, and I was like, yeah, I'll just kind of roll back to 1.7.3. So maybe it's me, but yeah, maybe Yeah, I thought I'll just go with all technology proven for this presentation. Better, good, than perfect, not working. Yeah, Michael. Yeah.
Question for you to ask the rest of the audience, especially if you are junior, who watched this and said, right, that's kind of vaguely interesting, I should try that, or like, or like, wow, it's way too much. Because I obviously recommended it to you at one point. I thought it was really a cool way of learning the bits of Rails by just playing with the small bits, because a file and you're doing something. So is there any feedback from anyone who's relatively new to Rails?
With my trucks like that. Same price, yeah. It's not too much also to stretch of what we already know, so that's the next step to us.
Cool.
Good to see what the edges are, I think. Between active record and like actual view.
Because I certainly working with a bunch of relatively new people, Rails, I would die for them to know some of this stuff, just to go, oh, this is a new thing, rather than like, I don't know, it does the thing. It's Rails. It's like, well, is it the routing? Is it the controller? Is it the model? Is it the view? And just because you learn all of Rails, it's hard for you to know. Whereas here you go, oh, I'm doing a rake task. I have no database. I have no pattern. I have no HTTP, but I can do it directly to create those things. But it makes you really understand that one bit.
The only bit that overwhelms me, not overwhelms me, but it's a bit much sometimes, is I think whenever I see minimum viable demos of controller level stuff, there seems to be a lot of boilerplate involved, and often I'm just like, oh, that is just too much for me to like get my head around. But the stuff that I was inspired by, the stuff that Anton was showing, it was all really easy to get into, and yeah, kind of nice to see how it works.
Cool. Yeah. For audience, to summarize, it's really easy to digest all these packages, and yeah, you don't have to be overwhelmed. Yeah, with Rails. Yeah, if you just take it apart. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. Cheers. Yeah.